Olivia Palmer had lived alone for nearly 7 years. Her home sat quietly at the edge of a small town near Seattle, surrounded by trees that turned golden each fall. The house used to be full kids, running up and down the stairs. A husband always fixing something, music, laughter, noise. But things change. The kids grew up and moved away. The husband left, and now silence filled every corner of her two-story home. She didn't mind it at first. Solitude had its own kind of peace. She could read by the window, tend to her small garden, and enjoy her coffee exactly the way she liked it. But lately, the silence had started to feel heavier. The empty rooms echoed too much. The evenings stretched on too long. And one day, she realized she didn't need all this space. She needed a little change. That's when she listed the upstairs apartment for rent. It wasn't much a bedroom, a small kitchen, and a separate entrance. She hadn't rented it in years, but it was clean and bright. She posted the ad online, not expecting much. But within days, a man named Jack Sullivan reached out. He was moving from Boston, starting fresh after a long relationship ended and looking for something temporary. His message was polite, short, and honest. He had a job lined up in town with a local architecture firm. No pets, no loud habits. Just needed a quiet place. They met on a Monday afternoon. Olivia opened the door and saw a tall, calm man in his mid-30s with kind eyes and a soft voice. Jack didn't carry much, just 2 suitcases and a box of books. He smiled when he spoke, and something about his presence felt ... grounded. Olivia hadn't planned to decide right away. But as they walked through the apartment, she found herself saying, "If you want it, it's yours." He moved in that weekend. For the first few days, it was like he wasn't even there. Jack was gone most of the day and came back quietly at night. Olivia would hear faint sounds, his footsteps upstairs, the soft creak of the stairs, and sometimes the gentle sound of jazz music playing late into the evening. He never disturbed her, never overstepped. Still, Olivia found herself curious. Not in a romantic way, at least that's what she told herself. But there was something different about him. Something quiet but intense. He wasn't like the usual renters she'd had in the past. He was kind, respectful, and seemed to carry something heavy behind his calm demeanor. One evening, she spotted him through the window, sitting on the porch steps, sketching in a notebook. The porch light hid his face just enough to show his concentration, the way he bit the end of his pen while thinking. She didn't stare, just watched for a second, then walked away. She told herself it was just curiosity. Nothing more. The first real conversation between them happened by accident. Jack had come down to ask about the mailbox, and Olivia was baking. She offered him a slice of warm banana bread. He accepted with a surprised smile. They talked for 15 minutes in the kitchen about weather, the town, and his new job. Jack had a calm way of speaking, never rushing his words, never trying too hard. Olivia found herself relaxing. After that, it became easier. Small chats turned into short visits. Olivia would be in her garden, and Jack would stop to ask about the plants. Sometimes he'd bring her coffee from the cafe downtown. "Thought you might like this," he'd say with a quiet smile. There was nothing flirty about it. No hints, no lines. Just two people living in the same house, slowly finding comfort in each other's presence. But Olivia noticed things. She noticed that Jack always looked a little tired, even after a weekend off. That he often sat in silence, staring out the window like he was remembering something, or maybe missing something. She wanted to ask, but didn't. It wasn't her place. One morning, she walked into the kitchen and found a note on the counter. "Thanks for the banana bread. It reminded me of home." Jack, it was simple, but it made her smile more than she expected. That week they started sharing coffee once a week Sunday mornings. Usually, Olivia would make a fresh pot, and Jack would bring something from the bakery. They didn't plan it. It just happened. During those quiet mornings, they started to talk more deeply. Olivia told him about her children, now both married and busy in different states. She spoke of her past with gentleness, even the painful parts. Jack listened closely, asking just enough questions, never pressing. Jack, in turn, opened up about Boston, about the engagement that ended suddenly, about his career that had once been fast-moving, then slowed down after he burned out. "I needed a place to start over," he said simply. Olivia nodded. "I understand that more than you know." One night, as Olivia sat reading on the porch, Jack walked by and paused. "Mind if I sit?" he asked Dot. She shook her head, and they sat together, watching the stars appear. Neither of them said much that night. But when Jack stood to leave, he looked at her and said, "This place feels more like home than any place I've been in years." Olivia didn't know what to say. She just smiled. Later that night, lying in bed, she wondered what exactly was changing. She reminded herself again he was just a tenant, younger, rebuilding his life, and only here for a while. Still, something about the way he said home stayed with her, and in the quiet of her room, Olivia realized something was starting. She just didn't know what, not yet, but she would soon. Olivia didn't know exactly when her mornings started to feel different. Maybe it was the third Sunday Jack showed up with blueberry muffins and a quiet smile. He always knocked lightly, holding the paper bag like a peace offering. She'd smile, wave him in, and they'd sit in the kitchen drinking coffee while the world outside moved slowly. He never overstayed. Their talks were easy, thoughtful, sometimes about books or music, sometimes about life. He listened without interrupting, and when he spoke, he chose his words carefully, like each one mattered. One morning Jack asked, "Were you always this calm?" Olivia laughed. "No, not at all. I used to rush through everything. Marriage, motherhood, work. Life felt like one long to-do list." He looked at her, genuinely curious. "And now? Now I like slow," she said, "even if it gets a little quiet." Jack nodded, as if he understood exactly what she meant. As October passed, Olivia found herself noticing small things. The way Jack always took his shoes off at the door. The way he looked out the window when he thought no one was watching. How he sometimes paused mid-sentence, like his mind was somewhere else. He wasn't hiding anything, but he carried something. That much was clear. One night it rained. Heavy, loud, sudden dot. Olivia had just finished folding laundry when she heard a knock. Jack stood in the doorway, holding a mug, his hoodie damp. "Lost power upstairs," he said. "Couldn't sleep anyway." She invited him in without hesitation. They sat in the living room, the fireplace crackling softly. Jack looked around at the framed photos on the shelves, her kids when they were little, a wedding picture tucked between travel souvenirs. "You miss it?" he asked, nodding toward the family pictures. "Sometimes," Olivia said, "but I don't live in the past. Not anymore." He gave her a small smile. "That's rare." The rain fell harder, beating against the windows. They talked for over an hour. Olivia told him about how she used to teach, how she used to plan every minute of her day, and how life taught her to let go of control after the divorce. Jack shared more than usual about how he'd spent 6 years with someone who never really saw him, how he worked too much, slept too little, and finally decided to leave before he lost himself completely. "I wanted to be someone I recognized again," he said quietly. Olivia looked at him then, not as her tenant, not as a younger man, but as someone who had been through his own kind of breaking. "You don't seem lost now," she said gently. He held her gaze. "That's because of you." The words stayed with her long after he left that night. She told herself not to overthink it, that he was just being kind. But something had changed, and it wasn't just her imagination. The following week, Olivia found herself checking the mirror before answering the door. She paid more attention to her clothes, her hair. It wasn't vanity, it was awareness. She felt awake in a way she hadn't in years. Jack noticed too. One morning, he complimented her scarf. Another time, her laugh. Small things, easy to miss, but meaningful when no one else had noticed in a long time. Their connection was quiet. Not flirtation, not romance. Just something warm. Something real, but Olivia couldn't ignore the questions creeping in. What did this mean? Was she imagining things? And even if she wasn't, what would she do? She didn't dare tell anyone. Her friends would worry, maybe even judge. "He's your tenant," they'd say. "He's younger. It's not smart." But they hadn't seen the way Jack looked at her, like her words mattered. They hadn't felt the calm that came with simply sitting next to him. One evening, as the leaves turned orange and gold, Olivia invited him to dinner. Just a simple meal: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, a bottle of red wine. They laughed more than usual that night. Jack told a story about getting lost in Rome. Olivia shared an embarrassing moment from her early teaching days. The laughter came easily. The pauses were comfortable as they cleared the table. Jack suddenly asked, "Do you ever feel like maybe you're starting over too late?" Olivia stopped, then answered honestly, "I used to, but not anymore. I think some things are meant to happen when you're finally ready for them." He looked at her quietly, as if searching her face for something, and then he said, "You make it feel possible." Her heart beat faster, but she smiled instead of speaking. That night, after he left, Olivia sat on the porch alone. She watched the wind play with the leaves. She wrapped her cardigan tighter around her and thought about everything unsaid between them. This wasn't a crush. It wasn't fantasy. It was something gentle, slow, respectful, and real. But it was also complicated. He was her tenant, he was younger, and he was healing. So was she. She didn't want to rush it, didn't want to name it too soon. But she couldn't deny what was growing. Between them, something that had nothing to do with age or rules or logic, just two people finding something they didn't know they needed. And the silence between them now, it wasn't empty, it was full of possibility. The first frost came early that November. Olivia noticed it when she stepped outside to water her plants and saw the thin layer of white covering the leaves. The air was sharp and still. Quiet mornings had always been her favorite, but now they carried something new: anticipation. Something unsaid had been sitting between her and Jack for weeks, growing silently. Jack was still living upstairs, still knocking on her door every Sunday with coffee and something from the bakery. Their conversations had deepened. They no longer talked about safe topics. They talked about pain, purpose, and the strange beauty of starting over. But what neither of them talked about was them. It was there. Olivia felt it. In the way he looked at her a little longer. In the way her chest fluttered when he was near. But she told herself not to make it into something more. He was younger. She was careful. Too careful. One evening she was in the kitchen cooking soup when Jack came down early. No coffee this time. Just him standing in the doorway. "I had a rough day," he said softly. She nodded toward the table. "Sit. I made too much soup anyway." He didn't say much at first. Just sat quietly, hands wrapped around the warm bowl, his shoulders low. After a few spoonfuls, he looked at her and asked, "Do you ever think about doing something completely unexpected?" Olivia paused, setting her spoon down. "Like what?" "Like following a feeling even if it doesn't make sense." She didn't answer right away. She watched the steam rise from her bowl, then said, "I used to live only by logic, but lately feelings have started to matter again." Jack met her eyes. "That's how I feel too." The moment was quiet but heavy. Something unspoken passed between them, and Olivia felt the truth of it hit her. He wasn't just a tenant anymore. And this wasn't just curiosity or comfort, it was more. After that night, everything shifted. They saw each other more often, shared small meals, went on walks, sat together in the living room, watching old movies. It was all innocent, but the feeling underneath wasn't. It was slow burning and real and confusing. One night, while they were walking near the lake, Olivia finally said what had been pressing on her heart. "I don't know what this is, or what it's supposed to be." Jack stopped walking. "I think about you all the time," he admitted. "But I don't want to make you uncomfortable. I respect you too much for that." Olivia smiled, though her heart beat fast. "It's not about discomfort. It's about risk." He nodded. "I know. You've lived more life than I have. You've lost more. And I don't want to add weight to what you're carrying." She turned toward him. "Jack, this isn't about years. It's about where we are, not how long we've been here. And the truth is, I feel something too. I'm just scared of what it could mean." That was the first time either of them truly said it out loud. Not love, not anything official. Just acknowledgement that whatever was happening between them was real. For a while, they didn't talk about it again. But it was there. In how Jack started leaving handwritten notes on the kitchen table. In how Olivia saved a spot for him at the dinner table. Even when he didn't say he was coming. One Sunday morning, he brought her a book instead of muffins. A novel she had once mentioned, long out of print. Found it in a second-hand store, he said casually. But Olivia could see the thought behind it. "You remembered," she said quietly. "Touched. I remember everything you say," he replied. That night, after he left, Olivia sat with the book in her lap, staring at the door, wondering how she had ended up here midlife. Surprised by emotion again? She thought those days were over. But Jack had reminded her that life didn't stop giving if you didn't stop receiving. Still, fear lingered. What would people say? What if it didn't last? What if she let herself feel too much and it all fell apart again? But then came the night that changed everything. It was late, and Olivia was locking up when she heard a knock. Jack stood there, soaked from the rain, holding a folded piece of paper. "I need you to read this," he said, voice low. She opened it slowly. It was a letter, short but personal. "Olivia, this is not something I planned. I came here to start over. You've given me peace, but more than that, you've reminded me what connection feels like. I'm not asking for answers. I just want you to know I care deeply. If you feel the same, even a little, I'd like to take a step forward with honesty, with care. If not, I'll still be grateful for your kindness." Olivia didn't speak. She just looked at him, heart full, eyes soft. "Say something?" Jack asked gently. She stepped closer. "I don't have the answers either. But yes, I feel it too." For the first time, there were no questions. Just truth. They didn't kiss. They didn't rush. They simply sat in the warmth of shared understanding. Finally letting the silence between them become something tender. That night, Olivia didn't sleep much. Not from worry, but from something else. Hope she hadn't felt it in a long time. And now it was back. Not loud. Not overwhelming, just real, just enough. Winter came gently, wrapping Olivia's town in soft snow and quiet nights. The world outside her windows looked peaceful, but inside, her heart was alive with change. Since that rainy night when Jack's letter had brought truth to their unspoken feelings. Things between them shifted in ways neither had expected. They were no longer just landlord and tenant. They were something fragile, something new. They took their time, no rush, no pressure. Each morning they shared breakfast. Each evening they talked until the house grew too quiet to ignore. They found comfort in small routines. Jack helping Olivia clear snow from the porch, Olivia bringing warm blankets upstairs. Both of them laughing at silly movies and sharing stories, but life isn't always easy, Olivia sometimes caught herself worrying about what this meant. Her children had moved away, living busy lives. Would they understand if she told them she was seeing Jack? She wasn't sure. And Jack had his own fears of past heartbreaks, of losing himself again. One snowy afternoon, as the fire crackled in the living room, Jack sat across from Olivia with a serious look. "I've been offered a permanent job in Seattle," he said quietly. "It's what I wanted when I moved here. But it means I might have to move out of the apartment." Olivia felt her heart twist. She had hoped he'd stay, but she didn't want to hold him back. "That's good news," she said, forcing a smile. "You should take it." Jack looked away, then back. "I don't want to lose what we have, but I also don't want to be the reason you're afraid to move on." The truth was clear to both of them. They were standing at a crossroads. For days, Olivia wrestled with the future. She realized that what she felt for Jack wasn't just comfort or kindness. It was love. But love wasn't simple. It was messy and uncertain. One evening, after a snowfall had covered the town in white, Olivia found Jack on the porch, staring at the stars. "Are you scared?" she asked softly. He nodded. "More than I thought I would be." She reached for his hand. Me too. But maybe fear means something important is happening. They talked late into the night, sharing dreams and fears, hopes and regrets. Neither knew what the future held, but both knew they wanted to face it together. When Jack finally accepted the job and told Olivia he'd be moving out, the house felt emptier than it had in months. But instead of sadness, Olivia felt gratitude for the chance to feel alive again, for the courage to open her heart, and for the friendship that had turned into something deeper. The day Jack moved was quiet. They packed his things with care, shared one last meal, and hugged, holding on to the moment. "Thank you," Jack said, "for everything." Olivia smiled through tears. "Thank you for reminding me I'm not alone." They promised to stay in touch. And as Jack drove away, Olivia felt a strange mix of loss and hope. Days turned into weeks. Olivia found herself walking past the empty apartment door and smiling at the memories. She still talked to Jack, but now their connection was different, less urgent, more patient. One morning, as spring crept closer, Olivia realized something important. Love wasn't about holding on tightly or fearing loss. It was about embracing moments, growing from them, and trusting life to lead the way. Her heart was open again, not because she had all the answers, but because she was brave enough to feel, and that was enough.